The dim hum of the colony ship's engines vibrated through the deck plating, a relentless reminder that they were adrift in the void. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, her knuckles whitening against the worn leather. At 42 she was all sharp edges, short-cropped hair, a scar tracing her jaw from a long-ago mining accident, and her crew knew better than to question her decisions twice. Beside her, Engineer Tomas Hale hunched over a flickering console, his fingers dancing across the controls with the precision of someone who'd rebuilt half the ship's life support from scrap. Tomas was the steady one, broad-shouldered and quiet, his optimism a rare spark in the dim bridge lighting. "Status on the core?" Ilara asked, her voice slicing through the alert tones. Tomas didn't look up. "Holding at 30%. The flux from that asteroid field scrambled the stabilizers again. If we don't reroute power soon, we'll lose auxiliary systems." Across the bridge, Navigator Kira Chin paced, her lithe frame coiled with frustration. Kira was the youngest at 28, with a quick mind that had mapped their escape from the Sol system when the corporate enforcers closed in. She stopped, tapping a stylus against her palm. "We can't keep dodging debris like this. The NAV charts show a clear vector to the outer rim in 12 hours, but one more hit and we're done." Ilara nodded, eyes fixed on the view screen where stars streaked past in false color. Humanity's exodus had started as hope, a ragtag fleet fleeing Earth's corporate wars, seeking a new world among the stars. But 6 months into the void, hope frayed. Their ship, the Odyssey, carried 200 souls, the last unbowed remnants of free thinkers. Now a failing warp core threatened to strand them forever. "Options," Ilara said, leaning forward. Tomas straightened, wiping sweat from his brow. "We vent the secondary coolant lines. It buys time but risks a hull breach if the seals fail." Kira shot him a look. "And if they do? We lose Atmo and engineering. People die." "Better than drifting," Tomas countered, his voice even but firm. Ilara waited, the weight of command pressing like gravity. Outside, the asteroid belt loomed, a graveyard of shattered rock, lit by the distant glow of a pulsar. They'd skirted it before, but the core's instability pulled them off course. No backups, no allies. Just them. "Prepare the vent," Ilara decided. Kira plot the evasion. Tomas make it clean. As alarms blared a warning, the ship shuddered, a chunk of ice grazing the hull with a metallic screech. Sparks flew from a panel, and Kira cursed under her breath, rerouting her display. The bridge air grew thick, recyclers straining against the rising tension. Down in engineering, Tomas moved fast, his team of 2 young techs he trained himself, following his lead. He sealed the hatches, fingers slick on the valves. "On my mark," he said, voice steady as the pressure built. The vent released with a hiss that echoed through the corridors, steam billowing into space. For a moment, silence. Then the core's hum deepened, stabilizing. Back on the bridge, Ilara exhaled. "Good work. Kira, how's our path?" "Clearing now," Kira replied, a faint smile breaking through. "But that was too close. The belt's shifting, something's pulling it apart." Ilara frowned at the screen. Sensors picked up anomalies, gravitational ripples, unnatural. Not natural debris. Something else tugged at the rocks, hidden in the shadows. "Tomas, get down there and double-check those seals," she ordered into the comm. "We might not get another chance." As he acknowledged, the ship lurched again, not from ice but a deeper tremor. The view screen flared with new readings, an energy signature, vast and alien, uncoiling from the belt's heart. Whatever it was, it had noticed them. The hum of the engines vibrated through the deck plating, a constant reminder that time was slipping away. Elena gripped the console edge, her knuckles whitening as she scanned the readouts. The colony ship's core was stable, for now, but the asteroid field ahead loomed like a graveyard of jagged teeth, courtesy of some long-ago cosmic collision. "Marcus talked to me," she said, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. Brave didn't mean fearless, it meant pushing through. Marcus wiped sweat from his brow, his fingers dancing over the holographic controls. "Shields are holding at 70%, but these rocks are pinging us like angry hornets. If we divert power from life support, we might punch through faster." His wit usually lightened the bridge, but today it carried an edge sharp as the debris scraping the hull. He glanced at Lila, who hovered nearby, her cautious eyes flicking between screens. Lila shook her head, arms crossed tight. Diverting now risks blackouts in the habitats. We've got 3,000 souls back there, Elena. One flicker and panic spreads faster than vacuum. She wasn't wrong. The colonists were already on edge, packed into cryopods and emergency quarters since the evacuation order hit. Earth's proxy wars with the Coalition had turned the Outer Rim into a no-man's land, and this ship, the Odyssey, was their last ticket out. Elena nodded, weighing it. The plan had been simple: skirt the field, slingshot around the gas giant, and jump to the neutral zone. But the Coalition scout drone they'd spotted an hour ago changed everything. It wasn't chasing, yet, but its signal was probing, likely calling in reinforcements. Rivals in the void meant scavengers, or worse, blockaders who saw human desperation as opportunity. Hold the line, she decided. Marcus, plot a tighter weave. Lila, get me eyes on that drone. The ship shuddered as the first real hit landed, a chunk of nickel iron glancing off the forward array. Alarms blared, red lights pulsing. Marcus cursed under his breath, rerouting auxiliary power on the fly. We're dancing on the edge here. One wrong turn. He trailed off, focusing. The view screen filled with the field's chaos. Boulders tumbling in slow motion, dust clouds swirling like ghosts. Lila patched into the external cams, her face paling. Drone's closing. It's not scouting, it's jamming our comms. Static crackled over the speakers, cutting off their hail to the forward fleet. Isolation hit harder than the impacts. Without contact, they were blind to any ambush. Elena's mind raced. The initial dodge maneuver, firing retros to swing wide, had backfired spectacularly. The field had shifted under gravitational pull, funneling them deeper into the densest part. Abort weave, she snapped. Full burn on port thrusters. Get us out. Marcus punched the command, but the response lagged. Engines are straining, overheat in 30 seconds. The ship groaned, metal protesting as it veered. A larger asteroid bore down, its shadow eclipsing the stars. Lila braced against the wall, whispering calculations under her breath. They were committed now, no turning back without ripping the hull. The impact came soft at first, a kiss of debris that sparked across the shields. Then the real one, a fist-sized fragment punched through a sensor vein, shearing it clean. Sparks flew in the engineering feed, and Marcus's console lit up with warnings. Lost lateral control. We're spinning. Elena lunged for the manual overrides, her hand steady. Compensate. Now. The bridge tilted, stars wheeling outside. In that moment the cost crystallized, not just the ship but the fragile hope aboard. One failure, and the departure that was supposed to redefine humanity's strength became a footnote in fear. But they weren't done fighting the void yet. The dim glow of the auxiliary lights flickered across the bridge of the Odyssey, casting long shadows over the consoles where Captain Elena Vasquez hunched, her fingers dancing across the holographic display. The ship's AI, a calm voice named Orion, had just confirmed the latest scan. The nebulous tendrils were closing in faster than predicted, their ionized gases playing havoc with the engines. Structural integrity at 78%, Orion intoned. Recommend immediate course correction. Elena glanced at her first officer, Marcus Hale, who stood rigid beside her, his jaw set in that familiar line of quiet determination. Marcus was the cautious one, always double-checking the math, but even he couldn't hide the sweat beading on his forehead. We've got no margin for error, he said, voice low. If we push the thrusters now, we risk a cascade failure in the core. Behind them, Dr. Lila Chin, the xenobiologist, paced the narrow walkway, her tablet clutched like a shield. She was the witty spark in their trio, quick with a quip to cut the tension. But her eyes darted to the viewport where the swirling purples and reds of the nebula loomed like a living storm. Great, so our grand exit from the Sol system turns into a cosmic blender party. Any bright ideas, or are we just winging it like last time? The challenge had started innocently enough. A routine departure from Earth's orbit, humanity's bold step into the unknown after decades of preparation. But the rival Krell fleet, those hulking insectoid warriors who'd claimed this sector as their sacred hunting ground, had other plans. Their interceptors had grazed the Odyssey shields hours ago, forcing the ship into this nebula for cover. Now the environmental hazard was turning lethal. The gases were eroding the hull, and resources were dwindling. Oxygen recyclers hummed at half capacity, and the water stores wouldn't last another cycle if they didn't break free. Elena straightened, her brave resolve stealing her features. She wasn't one for speeches, but action spoke louder. Orion, reroute power from non-essentials. Life support stays full, but dim the wreck bays. The AI complied with a soft chime. She turned to Marcus. You handle navigation. Plot a vector through the thinner edges. Lila, your scans, any weak points in this soup. Lila tapped her tablet furiously, her fingers a blur. There's a pocket here about 2 clicks starboard. It's denser with helium, might shield us from their sensors, but it'll fry the outer plating if we linger. She shot Elena a grin that didn't reach her eyes. Fancy a barbecue? Marcus punched in the coordinates, his movements precise despite the ship's subtle groan. Adjusting now. Hold on. The Odyssey lurched as the thrusters fired, the deck vibrating under their feet. Through the viewport, the nebula's glow intensified, tendrils whipping past like ethereal whips. Alarms blared briefly, a minor hull breach in Cargo Bay 3, but Elena silenced them with a swipe. Seal it off. We lose cargo, not crew. As the ship threaded the needle, Marcus's plan hit its first snag. The helium pocket was unstable, a bubbling cauldron that sent shockwaves rippling through the frame. Consoles sparked, and Lila stumbled, catching herself on a railing. That's not good, she muttered, pulling up readings. Electromagnetic interference spiking. Comms are down. Elena's mind raced. The Krell would be blind too, but so would they. No distress beacon, no backup from the trailing colony ships. The stakes pressed in. Fail here, and humanity's departure wasn't just delayed. It was a footnote in alien history, their ingenuity mocked as hubris. Manual override, she ordered. Marcus, you fly her blind. Lila, jury-rig the sensors with that biofilter you tweaked last week. He nodded, sliding into the pilot's seat, hands steady on the controls. Lila dove under a panel, tools clattering as she worked. The nebula roared outside, a single vivid image searing into Elena's vision. A massive tendril coiling around a distant star, devouring its light in a hungry spiral. Minutes stretched like hours. The ship shuddered again, harder this time, and a red light flashed, core temperature rising. Marcus cursed under his breath. We're overheating. Need to vent plasma, but that'll light us up like a flare. Do it, Elena said, gripping the armrest. Better a target we control than drift food. Lila emerged, grease-streaked but triumphant, her filter humming to life. Got it? We're clear but barely. The Odyssey burst from the pocket's edge, engines straining as they cleared the nebula's grasp. Cheers were muted. The cost lingered in the acrid scent of scorched wiring, and the knowledge that Bay 3's supplies, vital hydroponic seeds, were gone. Humanity's grit had bought them time, but the Krell wouldn't forget this defiance. As the stars sharpened ahead, Elena allowed herself a breath. The departure was redefined, not in glory but in the raw edge of survival. The dim glow of the auxiliary lights flickered across the bridge, casting long shadows that danced like uneasy specters. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the armrest of her command chair, her knuckles whitening against the worn leather. The ship's hum had shifted in the last hour, from the steady thrum of fusion drives to an erratic stutter that echoed her growing unease. Marco Ruiz, the chief engineer, hunched over a console nearby, his fingers flying across the holographic display, sweat beading on his forehead despite the recycled air's chill. Talk to me, Marco, Elena said, her voice steady but edged with the weight of command. She didn't look at him. Her eyes stayed fixed on the main viewport, where the swirling nebula outside mocked their predicament. The Arcturus belt, a graveyard of cosmic debris, had snared them like a fisherman's net. What they dismissed as routine turbulence was now a full-blown gravitic anomaly, pulling the Odyssey deeper into its maw. Marco wiped his brow with the back of his hand, not pausing his work. It's the sheer field's cap. The anomaly's warping spacetime around us. Think black hole light, but with a bad attitude. Our inertial dampeners are holding barely, but if we don't recalibrate the grav plates soon we'll be paced. His tone carried that familiar wry bite, a shield against the fear gnawing at them all. He glanced up, his dark eyes meeting hers for a split second. Lila's got the scans running in the lab. Says it's artificial. Like someone, or something, left this trap here on purpose. Elena's jaw tightened. Artificial. The word hung in the air, heavier than the debris pummeling the hull. The Odyssey wasn't just any ship, it was humanity's ark, carrying the last seeds of Earth across the void after the collapse. 500 souls in cryo, dreams of a new world, and now this, stranded in a forgotten corner of the galaxy light years from the nearest relay. The stakes weren't abstract, they were the lives depending on her choices, the fragile hope she'd sworn to protect. A sharp jolt rocked the bridge, sending sparks from an overhead panel. Alarms blared, red lights pulsing like a frantic heartbeat. Compensators failing on decks 3 and 4, the AI's calm voice intoned over the din. Recommend immediate evacuation protocols. No, Elena snapped, unbuckling her harness and standing. Her boots magnetized to the deck with a soft click, grounding her amid the chaos. We fight this. Marco, give me a workaround. Lila. She keyed the intercom. Report. From the lab, Dr. Lila Chen's voice crackled through, laced with caution but unyielding focus. Captain, the anomaly's emitting modulated pulses. It's a beacon or a weapon. Frequency matches old Krell signatures from the archives. If we match its rhythm, we might slip the net. But it'll take rerouting power from life support. Risky. We lose cryo integrity and... She didn't finish. Elena knew the cost. Waking the colonists too soon meant rationing air, food, everything for months. But staying meant death for all. Do it, Elena ordered. Marco, you're with me. We're going to engineering. Marco nodded, grabbing his toolkit with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Aye, Cap. Let's show this space ghost what humans do with bad days. They moved fast, corridors blurring as the ship groaned under another pull. Bulkheads creaked, and loose panels rattled like bones in a gale. Elena's mind raced, plans forming, contingencies branching. The Krell had vanished centuries ago, their tech a myth whispered in frontier tales. If this was theirs, it redefined the threats out here. Not just vacuum and radiation but relics that hungered. In engineering, the heat hit them like a wall, steam hissing from ruptured lines. Marco dove into the core, barking orders at the automated drones. Elena manned the auxiliary controls, her hands steady as she synced the readings from Lila's lab. The anomaly's pulse throbbed through the sensors, a rhythmic demand that vibrated in her chest. Almost there, Marco grunted, sweat soaking his jumpsuit. A console sparked and he cursed in Spanish, slamming a panel shut. One more surge and we're ghosts. The ship lurched violently, gravity flipping for a heart-stopping second. Elena braced against the console, tasting blood from a bitten lip. Then, a low whine built, the grav plates realigning, matching the anomaly's beat. The pull eased inch by agonizing inch, the nebula's glow shifting from devourer to reluctant spectator. They broke free with a shudder, the Odyssey limping into clearer space. Cheers erupted over the comms, Lila's relieved laugh cutting through. But Elena lingered at the viewport, watching the anomaly recede. It had cost them. Cryopods flickering, power reserves at half, and now the shadow of the Krell looming larger. Humanity's departure wasn't just a flight, it was a gauntlet redefining what power meant out here, not in weapons but in the grit to adapt, to endure. Marco clapped her shoulder, his wit returning. Told you we'd dance our way out. What's next, Cap? Tea party with the space whales? She allowed a small smile but her eyes stayed on the stars. We keep moving. And we learn from this. No more surprises. Yet as the ship stabilized, a faint signal pinged from the anomaly's direction. Not a threat, but an invitation. Or a warning. The void held its breath and so did they. Elena gripped the railing of the observation deck, her knuckles whitening as the stars blurred into streaks beyond the viewport. The Odyssey shuddered again, a deep groan echoing through the hull like the ship itself was protesting their path. Marco was already at the console, his fingers flying over the holographic display, sweat beading on his forehead despite the recycled air's chill. Power surge in the core, it's feeding back into the engines, he muttered, voice tight but laced with that familiar edge of sarcasm. If we don't reroute soon, we'll be painting the void with plasma. Lena hovered behind him, her tablet clutched like a shield, eyes darting between readouts. She was the cautious one, always double-checking, but now her caution bordered on paralysis. We can't just reroute blindly. The simulations showed a 40% chance of cascade failure. What if this pushes us off the departure vector entirely? Elena turned from the viewport, her breath steady despite the knot in her stomach. Brave didn't mean fearless, it meant pushing through. Then we adapt. Marco, isolate the auxiliary relays. Lena, run a quick diagnostic on the grav plating. If we're venting, I don't want us floating like ghosts when the aliens catch up. The challenge had started as a whisper in the comms logs. An alien fleet shadowing their exodus from Sol, not attacking outright but probing, testing the humans' resolve. Earth's departure wasn't just evacuation. It was a statement, a redefinition of what power meant when a species turned its back on its cradle. But now, with the wormhole generator acting up, some glitch from the rushed assembly on Mars, the Odyssey was limping, and those shadows were closing in. Marco nodded, his wits surfacing as he patched the lines. Auxiliaries online. Gritting my teeth here, Cap. Feels like jury-rigging a bicycle with quantum tape. A alarm blared, red lights pulsing across the deck. Lena's tablet chimed urgently. Grav plating's destabilizing. We're losing cohesion in the forward bays. Elena strode to the emergency panel, slamming the override. The ship bucked, metal creaking as if alive and angry. She could picture the rest of the crew, thousands of souls in cryopods below, trusting this fragile vessel to carry humanity's spark to Proxima. Failure wasn't an option, it was extinction. Status, she barked, helping Marco secure the final connection. He grinned faintly, wiping his brow. Reroute holding for now. But that surge? It's not random. Looks like interference. Those Xeno bastards are jamming us. Lena's face paled, but she stepped forward, her voice gaining steel. If it's targeted, we can counter with a frequency shift. I've got a protocol from the archives. Old Earth tech, but it might mask our signature. Elena met her eyes, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. Teamwork wasn't speeches. It was this, patching flaws with whatever grit they had left. Do it. Marco, buy us time. Fire a decoy burst if you have to. As the ship steadied, the viewport cleared, revealing the distant glints of the alien formation. They weren't fleeing anymore, they were buying seconds, turning desperation into defiance. But the cost lingered in the flickering lights, a reminder that every adaptation chipped away at their margin for error. One more surge, and the Odyssey might redefine not just power but oblivion. The dim hum of the auxiliary engines vibrated through the deck plating, a constant reminder that the Odyssey's main drive was still offline. Elena gripped the railing of the observation deck, her knuckles white against the cold metal. Below, through the reinforced viewport, the asteroid field's jagged silhouettes twisted in the starlight, each one a potential collision waiting to happen. They'd been dodging these rocks for hours now, ever since the NAV computer glitched during the last burn. Marco's jury-rigged fix had bought them time, but not enough. Captain, we've got incoming, Lila's voice crackled over the intercom, sharp with the edge of exhaustion. Elena turned, her boots scraping softly on the grated floor. The scientist's face appeared on the small screen embedded in the wall, pale under the harsh glow of the lab lights. Scanners show a ship, Krell design. They're matching our vector. Not a friendly hail. Elena's jaw tightened. The Krell. Of all the species to stumble into out here, it had to be them, territorial scavengers who'd claimed half the outer rim as their junkyard empire. They'd ignored humanity's departure from Sol, but now with the Odyssey limping and broadcasting distress pings, it was like waving a red flag. How long? 10 minutes tops. They're accelerating. Lila's eyes darted off-screen, fingers flying over her console. I can try masking our signature, but it'll drain the reserves we need for the drive repair. Do it, Elena said, already moving toward the bridge. Her mind raced through options, each one narrower than the last. The plan had been simple. Slip through the field, reach the repair beacon at its edge, and patch the drive before the Krell patrols caught wind. But the glitch had turned that into a gamble, and now the dice were rolling against them. Marco met her in the corridor, his toolkit slung over one shoulder, grease smudged across his forehead like war paint. Heard the chatter. Krell bastards. What's the play? We fight or we run? Neither if we can help it. Elena kept her voice steady, even as doubt gnawed at her gut. Marco's would usually lighten these moments, but his grin was absent now, replaced by a focused squint. He fell into step beside her, the two of them navigating the tight confines of the ship with the ease of long partnership. Lila's cloaking us. You focus on the drive, get it humming before they lock on. He snorted, popping open a panel to check a flickering light. I cap. But if this backfires, I'm blaming your optimism. A spark jumped from the wiring, and he cursed under his breath, slamming the panel shut. The ship lurched slightly, a rogue asteroid grazing the shields with a low groan. On the bridge, the air was thick with the scent of recycled oxygen and overheating circuits. Elena dropped into the command chair, pulling up the tactical display. The Krell vessel loomed larger now, its bulbous hull scarred from countless salvage runs, weapons pods glinting like predatory eyes. Lila entered from the side hatch, her lab coat rumpled, carrying a tablet clutched like a shield. "Masking's holding for now," she reported, sliding into the ops station. Her cautious nature showed in the way she double-checked every reading, fingers hovering before committing. But the field's interfering. If they deploy drones, we're blind. Elena nodded, her gaze fixed on the screen. The initial plan had seemed solid. Use the asteroids for cover, slip past while Marco worked. But the Krell were adapting faster than expected, their ship weaving through the debris with unnatural precision. A alert blared, drones launching. "Damn it," Marco's voice echoed from the engine room feed. "Shields are flickering. That graze must have weakened them. Cap, I need more power down here." "Divert from life support," Elena ordered, ignoring the chill that decision brought. The temperature would drop, but they'd survive it. She had to believe that. Lila shot her a worried glance but complied, her hand steady despite the tension etching lines around her mouth. The first drone skimmed past, its sensors pinging the Odyssey's hull. Alarms wailed as the cloaking faltered, the Krell ship locking weapons. Elena's heart pounded, but she forced her voice calm. "Evasive pattern Delta. Marco, talk to me." "Drive's at 40%, he grunted, the sound of tools clanging in the background. "But something's wrong," feedback loop. "If I push it, we might blow the core." The ship shuddered under a near miss from the drone's pulse cannon, sparks erupting from a console. Lila yelped, batting at a smoldering panel. Elena leaned forward, calculating angles. The field's heart was just ahead, a dense cluster that could hide them, but navigating it blind was suicide. The plan was unraveling, the Krell closing in like wolves on a wounded prey. "Hold on," Elena muttered, her fingers dancing over the controls. She initiated a risky slingshot maneuver, using an asteroid's gravity to whip them sideways. The G-forces pressed them into their seats, the world blurring outside the viewport. For a heartbeat it worked, the Krell ship overshot, drones scattering. But as they emerged from the spin, Marco's voice cut through, laced with urgency. "Cap, it's frying. We can't." An explosion rocked the engine room feed, static swallowing his words. Elena's stomach dropped. The repair had backfired, the drive's feedback igniting a secondary fault. Smoke began to curl from vents, the ship's lights dimming to emergency red. Lila's face was ashen. "We're dead in the water." Captain Alara Voss gripped the console's edge as the Odyssey's alarms blared a staccato rhythm, red lights pulsing like a wounded heart across the bridge. Her knuckles whitened, but her voice cut through the din, steady as the hum of the engines. "Status Reyes. Give me something I can use." Ensign Marco Reyes, the ship's wiry engineer, hunched over his flickering holographic display, sweat beading on his brow despite the recycled air's chill. His fingers danced across the controls, rerouting power from non-essentials. Life support in the lower decks took a hit, but he didn't flinch. "The rift's expanding, Cap. It's like the fabric of space is unraveling. Our shields are holding at 30%, but if we don't vent the plasma buildup soon, it'll fry the core." Lila Chin, the xenobiologist turned reluctant navigator, shot him a glare from her station. Her sharp eyes, framed by the practical braid that kept her dark hair from her face, narrowed in frustration. Always the cautious one, she preferred data over gut calls, but out here gut was all they had left. Venting means exposing the hull. "We've got debris fields closing in, alien wreckage from that scout ship we vaporized. One wrong burst and we're shrapnel." Ilara nodded, her mind racing through the options like a chess master eyeing a losing board. The crew of 4, her Reyes, Lila, and the silent medic Dr. Harlan Graves, who was patching up the wounded in med bay, had come too far to fold now. Humanity's exodus from a dying sol system had been a gamble, a fleet of arc ships fleeing the encroaching void storms. But this rift, this tear in reality birthed by some ancient alien war machine they'd stumbled upon, threatened to swallow them whole. It wasn't just survival, it was proving that humans didn't run, they adapted. Options, Elara said, her tone brooking no delay. She straightened, the weight of her command insignia feeling heavier than the stars outside. Reyes wiped his forehead with the back of his hand. We could slingshot around the edge using the debris as a buffer. Risky, but it might buy us time to stabilize. Lila shook her head, her voice tight. And if the rift pulls us in? We've seen what it does. Warps gravity, twists time. The Pioneer got caught last week. Their last transmission was screams. The bridge fell silent for a beat, the only sound the ship's groans as another gravitational wave buffeted them. Elara's jaw set. She'd lost friends on the Pioneer, good people who'd trusted her lead fleet. No more ghosts on her watch. Graves, she activated the comm, how's the team? The medic's voice crackled back, calm but edged with strain. Stable but too with fractures. Whatever's out there is messing with our inertial dampeners. Hurry it up, Voss. Elara's eyes flicked to the viewport, where the rift loomed, a jagged maw of swirling purples and blacks, spewing ethereal tendrils that clawed at the void. It redefined fear, this thing, not the cold unknown of space but a hungry intelligence probing, learning from every ship it claimed. And power? Humans had built these arcs with grit and scavenged tech, turning scraps into salvation. But here ingenuity met the abyss. All right, she decided, her words clipping the tension. Reyes prepped the slingshot. Lila, plot the trajectory, use the wreckage to mask our signature. If it backfires, we improvise. Reyes grinned, a flash of his witty spark breaking through. Cap. Let's show this rift what human stubbornness looks like. As the Odyssey banked hard, engines thrumming to life, the debris field rushed toward them like a meteor storm. Lila's hands flew over her panel, calculating vectors in her head while the ship shuddered. A chunk of alien hull glanced off their shields, sparks erupting in the black. Elara held her breath, the gamble hanging by a thread. Then, the rift pulsed, a deep, resonant throb that vibrated through the deck plates. Alarm spiked anew. It's reacting, Lila whispered, horror edging her caution. It's adapting to us. Elara's grip tightened. The plan was fraying already, but surrender wasn't in their blood. Hold course. We're not prey, we're the ones who rewrite the rules. The ship dove into the chaos, the rift's tendrils reaching out like curious fingers, and in that moment the bridge felt smaller, the stakes sharper, as the first real test of their departure unfolded. The dim hum of the auxiliary engines vibrated through the deck plating, a constant reminder that the Odyssey's main drive was still offline. Captain Elena Vargas gripped the armrest of her command chair, her knuckles whitening as she stared at the holographic display. Red alerts flickered across the fleet's positions, 37 colony ships trailing behind like wounded beasts, their formation ragged against the starfield. The Krell Armada loomed on the edge of sensor range, a swarm of angular fighters holding position, as if waiting for the humans to falter. Status on the core relay? Elena asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. She didn't look at Marco, she could hear him muttering under his breath at the engineering console, fingers dancing over the interface. Marco wiped sweat from his brow, his usual smirk absent. It's a mess, Cap. The quantum entanglement's frayed, looks like that last microjump sheared half the stabilizers. We patch it now, we risk a cascade failure across the whole fleet. Give me 10 minutes and I can reroute power from the secondary banks. Lia Chin, the xenobiologist turned reluctant tactician, leaned over the tactical board, her glasses slipping down her nose. She pushed them up with a precise motion, eyes narrowing at the incoming data streams. 10 minutes we don't have. The Krell are probing our shields again, weak pulses testing for vulnerabilities. If they commit, our escorts won't hold. Elena nodded, her mind racing through options. The plan had been simple, a synchronized leap to the outer rim, using the nebula's interference to mask their escape. But the drive malfunction had turned it into a crawl, exposing them to the alien pursuers. The Krell didn't want the humans gone. They wanted submission, their broadcasts still crackling with demands for the colony tech blueprints. Refusal meant escalation. Divert what you need, Marco, Elena decided. Leah, signal the escorts to Titan formation. No heroics, just buy us time. As Marco dove back into the code, sparks flying from an exposed panel, the ship shuddered. A low alarm wailed, another shield breach on the port side. Elena unstrapped and crossed to the viewport, pressing her palm against the cool transparent steel. Below, the evacuation shuttles darted like fireflies, ferrying the last stragglers from the surface platforms. Earth, or what was left of it, shrank in the distance, a scarred marble swallowed by the void. They'd fought too hard to let it end here, not after redefining what strength meant to these starfaring overlords. Leah's voice cut through the tension. Captain, incoming transmission from the Krell lead vessel. They're hailing again. Put it on, Elena said, turning back to her chair. The screen resolved into the angular face of Commander Vexkar, his multifaceted eyes gleaming with predatory calm. Bioluminescent veins pulsed along his neck frill, a sign of agitation the humans had learned to read. Human vessel Odyssey, he intoned, his translated voice a mechanical rasp. Your flight is futile. Surrender the drive schematics and we permit your exodus. Resist and your fleet becomes debris. Elena's jaw tightened. She leaned forward, meeting those unblinking eyes. We've shown you what human grit looks like, Vexkar. You chased us across 3 systems because you fear it, not our weapons but our will. We're leaving on our terms. Stand down or follow us into the dark. The commander's frill flared, but he said nothing more before the channel cut. Marco let out a low whistle. Bold words, Cap. Think it'll work? It has to, she replied, though doubt gnawed at her. The engineering console beeped triumphantly, relay stabilized for now. But as the fleet lurched forward, engines straining, a new alert blared. Multiple contacts breaking from the Krell formation, closing fast. Leah spun in her seat. Fighters inbound, 20 at least. They're not probing anymore. Elena hit the comms. All hands, battle stations. Marco, get us that jump window. Adrenaline surged as she strapped in, the stars blurring into streaks. The cost was already mounting, ships lost, lives hanging by threads, but surrender wasn't in their blood. Not when every adaptation, every desperate fix, carved their legend deeper into the galaxy's fear. The first impacts rocked the hull, energy lances glancing off reinforced plating. Marco cursed, rerouting shields on the fly. Holding but barely. Jump in 3. Elena gripped tighter, whispering a silent vow to the crew. They'd redefine power one more time or die proving it. The nebula's glow enveloped them as the drive ignited, a desperate plunge into uncertainty. Behind, the Krell fighters swarmed, but the fleet vanished in a ripple of warped space, gone for the moment but the chase far from over. The dim glow of emergency lights flickered across the bridge, casting long shadows that danced like specters over the consoles. Elena gripped the armrest of her command chair, her knuckles white against the worn leather. The ship's hum had turned ragged, a labored breath echoing the strain in her chest. Marcus hunched over the engineering panel, his fingers flying across the holographic display, sweat beading on his forehead despite the chill that had settled in the air recyclers. Status, Marcus, she said, her voice steady but edged with the fatigue of days without real sleep. He didn't look up, muttering under his breath as sparks popped from a nearby relay. Fusion cores holding, barely. That last micrometeoroid shower chewed through the outer shielding like it was foil. We're venting plasma, Captain. If we don't seal the breach in the next hour, we'll be space debris before the aliens even blink. Lila, strapped into the science station across from him, glanced up from her scanner feeds. Her eyes, sharp behind her glasses, carried that familiar caution, the one that had saved them more than once. Scans show the pursuing fleet closing in. They're not firing yet, but their signatures match the blockade runners from Epsilon. Sleek, fast, and armed to the teeth. If they board us, it's over. Our departure windows shrinking faster than the oxygen reserves. Elena nodded, forcing her mind to the tactical overlay projected on the main view screen. The stars blurred into streaks as the Odyssey pushed her engines to the red line, humanity's last colony ship fleeing the crumbling alliance that had once promised safety. Below decks, the colonists, 5,000 souls packed into cryopods and makeshift quarters, depended on this fragile vessel. One wrong move, and their bid for a new home on the fringe worlds ended in silence. Options? She asked, scanning the readouts. The initial plan had been simple. Slingshot around the gas giant's gravity well to shake the pursuers, buy time to repair and jump to hyperspace. But the storm of debris had turned that into a gamble, and now the well's pull was dragging them off course, the Odyssey listing like a wounded animal. Marcus straightened, wiping his brow with the back of his hand, a wry grin cracking his dirt-streaked face. Clever fix incoming. I've rerouted auxiliary power to the maneuvering thrusters. Should give us a burst to stabilize. But it'll fry the secondary reactors. One shot, Elena. Make it count. She met his gaze, seeing the grit there, the unyielding spark that defined them all. Humans didn't conquer stars with brute force. They did it with these moments, scraping victory from the jaws of loss. Lila, plot the correction vector. Tighten it as much as you can without ripping us apart. The scientist's fingers hesitated over her controls, her cautious nature warring with the urgency. It's risky. The giant's magnetic field could induce a surge, fry the NAV systems entirely. We might end up slingshotting right into their formation. Better than drifting, Elena replied, unstrapping and moving to stand between them. The ship groaned, a deep metallic shudder vibrating through the deck plates. Alarms blared softly in the background, a chorus of warnings ignored. Marcus initiated the sequence, and the Odyssey lurched, thrusters firing in a staccato rhythm that pressed them back into their seats. The view screen showed the gas giant swelling, its swirling storms a hypnotic maelstrom of orange and red. For a heartbeat it seemed to work, the ship's nose lifted, trajectory straightening. Then the lights dimmed to a sullen red, and a new alarm pierced the air, hull integrity failing. Breach widening. Marcus shouted, slamming a fist on the panel. The patch held for the core but it's shearing the outer hull. We're losing Atmo in sections 12 through 15. Elena's heart pounded as she keyed the comms. All hands brace for emergency seals. Engineering teams to auxiliary bulkheads. Below, she knew the chaos would be spreading, cryopods rattling, families huddling in the dim corridors, their dreams of exodus hanging by a thread. Lila's voice cut through, tight with calculation. Vectors off by 3 degrees. We're veering toward their lead ship. Impact in 90 seconds if we don't adjust. Marcus was already at work, splicing cables with bare hands, sparks illuminating his determined scowl. Give me 20 more seconds. I can crosswire the emergency vents, use the escaping plasma as a makeshift thrust vector. It'll buy us the angle but it'll light us up like a flare. They'll see every move. Elena waited, the cost etching lines into her face. That flare would expose their weakened state, invite a barrage from the alien fleet. But surrender wasn't in their blood. Do it. Lila, sink the shields to the burst, focus everything forward. As the ship twisted, the giant's fury raging outside, Elena felt the weight of it all. The colonies they'd left in ruins, the alliances shattered by betrayal, the fragile hope carried in every human aboard. The Odyssey wasn't just metal and code, she was their defiance, hurtling toward the unknown. The plasma vent ignited, a brilliant azure streak against the void, shoving the ship sideways with brutal force. Alarms wailed, but the trajectory snapped true. The lead alien vessel loomed large on the screen, its weapons ports glowing ominously, then receded as they skimmed past, the slingshot's momentum hurling them free. Hyperdrive priming, Lila announced, her voice laced with relief. Jump in 30. But Marcus, the core's at critical. One more hit and we're done. He slumped, the dim hum of the engines vibrated through the deck plating, a constant reminder that the Odyssey was still alive, still fleeing. The view screen flickered with star streaks, but behind them the alien pursuers loomed like shadows in the void, sleek, predatory ships from the Vexry Collective, their hulls gleaming with the cold efficiency of a hive mind bent on reclamation. Status, Marcus? Elena's voice cut sharp through the bridge tension, her eyes never leaving the tactical display. The engineer wiped sweat from his brow, his fingers dancing over a jury-rigged console patched with human ingenuity. Exposed wires bundled like veins, a salvaged fusion core pulsing erratically. Shields at 30% cap. That last volley cooked our primary array, but I've rerouted power from life support. We're breathing shallow for now, another hit and it'll be suits only. Marcus flashed a grin, wry and unyielding, the kind that had kept the crew sane through the exodus from Sol. He was the fixer, the one who turned scrap into salvation, but even he couldn't hide the strain in his voice. Lila hunched over her station, her cautious nature etched in the furrow of her brow as she cross-referenced sensor data. The scientist's hands trembled slightly, not from fear but from the weight of what she'd uncovered hours ago. The Vexari weren't just hunting. They feared the humans' departure, the ripple it would send through galactic alliances. They're closing, Elena. 3 minutes to optimal firing range. If we vent the auxiliary tanks, we might eke out a burst of speed, but it'll leave us dry for maneuvers. Elena nodded, her mind racing through options like a chess master in check. The plan from Chapter 9 had backfired spectacularly. The feint toward the nebula had drawn the Vexari in, but their adaptive shields shrugged off the ion storm like rain. Now, with resources dwindling and the crew's morale fraying, the cost felt personal. 2 engineers lost in the engine room breach, their faces haunting the quiet moments. "Do it," Elena said, her decision firm, born of grit rather than glory. Marcus prepped the vents. Lila, sync the NAV computer for a slingshot around that gas giant ahead. We're not running blind anymore, we're turning their fear against them. Marcus moved like lightning, his tools clanging as he isolated valves. Cap. Remind me why we didn't just nuke the bastards back at the relay? His wit masked the ache. He'd lost his brother in the initial skirmish, a quiet casualty of humanity's bold leap from a crumbling cradle. Because we're not them, Elena replied, standing now, her posture a beacon for the bridge crew. We build, we adapt. Vent on my mark. The ship groaned as plasma flooded the exhaust ports, a brilliant flare erupting from the rear thrusters. Alarms wailed, but the Odyssey surged forward, the sudden acceleration pinning everyone to their seats. On the view screen, the Vexari formation wavered, their precise calculus disrupted by the unpredictable human maneuver. Lila's voice rose, urgent but steady. Giant's gravity well locking in. They'll overshoot if we time this right, use their momentum to slingshot us into the drift lanes. The deck shuddered as the ship arced into the planet's pull, stars wheeling wildly. A Vexari beam grazed the hull, sparking against the improvised shielding, but they held. Elena watched the enemy ships elongate in pursuit, their collective mind too rigid to pivot fast enough. For a heartbeat, silence fell, broken only by the creak of straining metal. Then Marcus whooped, pumping a fist. We're clear. Drift lanes opening, hyperspace jump in 60. But Elena's gaze lingered on the fading signatures. The Vexari would regroup, their fear morphing into something fiercer. Humanity's departure had cracked the galaxy's fragile peace, and the consequences trailed them like exhaust. As the stars blurred into hyperspace streaks, she allowed herself a breath, the weight of command settling heavier. They had bought time, but the real test lay ahead in the unknown beyond. The view screen ahead showed the alien fleet closing in, their sleek vessels forming a tightening noose around the Ark's escape vector. 12 hours ago, Marcus's jury-rigged EMP burst had bought them time, scattering the lead ships like startled fish. But now, with the core drive whining in protest, that window was slamming shut. Status on the auxiliary thrusters? Elena's voice cut through the hum of strained systems, steady despite the knot in her gut. Lila hunched over her station, fingers flying across the holographic display. Her cautious nature had kept them alive this long, double-checking every calculation, every risk assessment, but even she couldn't hide the tremor in her hands. 80% nominal, Captain. But if we push them harder, we risk a cascade failure. The hull integrity is down to 62% from the last skirmish. Marcus leaned back from his engineering feed, wiping sweat from his brow with a rag that had seen better days. His wit had been their lifeline, cracking tension with barbs that reminded everyone they were still human. 62? That's optimistic. Feels more like we're flying a colander. But hey, I've got a workaround, reroute power from the non-essentials. Life support dips a bit, but it'll give us the juice to slingshot past their flank. Elena nodded, her mind racing through the variables. The aliens, those enigmatic voidsiders with their fear of the unknown, had blockaded humanity's exodus not out of malice but terror. Humans, with their relentless ingenuity, represented chaos they couldn't predict. One wrong move, and the Ark carried not just 5,000 souls, but the spark that could ignite a war across the stars. The cost was already high. The colony ship trailing them had been vaporized in the initial clash, a grim reminder that retreat wasn't free. "Execute it," she said. "Lila, plot the course. Tighten the curve, make it look like we're panicking." As the ship lurched into motion, the deck plates vibrating underfoot, alarms blared. A new contact bloomed on the tactical overlay, a Voidsider interceptor, slipping through the disrupted formation like a shadow. It fired, a lance of plasma scorching the shields. The impact rocked them, sparks erupting from a nearby panel. "Shields at 40. Lila shouted, her voice edging toward panic. Marcus cursed, diving under his console to yank free a bundle of sizzling cables. "That wasn't in the plan. Their adaptive shielding, it's learning our patterns faster than I can scramble them." Elena unstrapped herself, moving to the central holodable where the battle unfolded in miniature. The Ark's path arced toward a nebula's edge, a gamble on its ionized clouds disrupting sensors. But the interceptor was gaining, its trajectory unerring. She traced a finger along an alternate vector, her brave resolve hardening into action. "We adapt. Marcus, can you overload their pursuit systems? Mirror their own plasma signature back at them?" He emerged, eyes lighting with that familiar spark. "Clever. Risky as hell, could fry our arrays too, but yeah. Give me 2 minutes." The ship groaned as thrusters fired in staccato bursts, weaving through debris from the fallen colony. Elena watched the holodable, heart pounding. The Voidsiders' fear was their weapon now. Humans didn't conquer through brute force but by turning the tide with what they had. Lila fed in adjustments, her caution yielding to necessity, murmuring coordinates that shaved seconds off the intercept. Marcus's voice crackled over the intercom. "Done. Firing the echo now." A pulse rippled from the Ark, invisible but potent. On the view screen, the interceptor faltered, its weapon stuttering as false signals overwhelmed its core. It veered off, tumbling into the nebula's embrace, a silent casualty of its own paranoia. Relief washed through the bridge, but it was fleeting. The maneuver had cost them. Sensors flickered, half blind, and the core drive's whine deepened into a growl. "We're through the noose," Lila reported, exhaling shakily. "But the nebula's stirring up interference. We won't know if reinforcements are coming until it's too late." Elena settled back into her chair, the weight of command settling heavier. The departure from Sol had redefined everything. Power as persistence, fear as the fuel for survival. One more push and they'd break free. But the stars ahead held their own shadows, and the Ark bore scars that no ingenuity could fully erase. Elena gripped the armrests of the command chair, her knuckles white against the worn leather. The bridge hummed with the low thrum of emergency systems, red lights flickering like distant stars across the consoles. Marco hunched over the engineering panel, his fingers dancing across holographic displays, sweat beading on his forehead despite the recycled air's chill. "Come on, you stubborn beast," he muttered, coaxing the fusion core back to life. Lila stood at the viewport, her cautious eyes scanning the void where the Kragther blockade loomed, a jagged line of warships, their hulls scarred from the skirmishes that had chased humanity's Exodus fleet to this nebula's edge. The plan had been simple at the start. Slip through the interference cloud using the nebula's ionized gases to mask their signature. But the Kragther had adapted faster than anticipated, their sensor drones piercing the haze like needles. Now, with the Odysseus shields failing and oxygen reserves dipping into the red, the cost pressed in, every breath a reminder of the colonies they'd left behind, the families betting on this desperate leap to uncharted space. "Status?" Elena asked, her voice steady, though her mind raced through contingencies. She'd always been the anchor, the one who pushed forward when doubt clawed at the edges. Marco glanced up, his usual wit sharpened by exhaustion. "Course stabilizing at 60%. Enough for a micro-jump if we dump the auxiliary power to weapons. But those drones are closing, 5 minutes tops." Lila turned, her tablet clutched like a shield. "The nebula's density is our edge. If we vent plasma from the exhaust ports, it could create a false echo, draw them off course. Risky, the feedback might fry our NAV systems." Elena nodded, weighing it. The stakes had never been abstract. They'd lost 2 escort ships already, their debris fields silent warnings in the rear sensors. Humanity's departure wasn't just flight, it was a statement, redefining what power meant in a galaxy that feared their unyielding grit. No grand alliances, no submission to the old councils. Just survival earned through clever edges. Do it, Elena said. Marco, reroute the vents. Lila, plot the echo trajectory, make it look like we're breaking right toward their flagship. The team moved as one, a rhythm honed in the fire of the pursuit. Marco's hands blurred, sealing bulkheads and priming the vents with a hiss that echoed through the deck. Lila's calculations flowed across the main screen, projecting a ghostly duplicate of the Odyssey veering into the blockade's heart. Elena watched the drones pivot, their formations tightening like a noose around the Phantom. Alarms blared as the plasma surged, the ship shuddering under the strain. A jolt rocked the bridge, sparks flying from an overhead panel. Feedback hitting NAV, compensating. Marco yelled, his voice cutting through the chaos. The viewport filled with the bloom of cracked their fire, lancing toward the decoy. For a heartbeat, silence reigned, broken only by the core's rising whine. Then, the Odyssey lurched forward, microjump engaging in a blur of warped stars. They emerged on the nebula's far side, the blockade a fading shadow. Cheers erupted, ragged and real, but Elena held up a hand. Scanners pinged. Structural integrity at 70%, life support strained. The lingering consequence hung heavy, the fleet's other ships scattered, comms spotty, and the Cragther surely regrouping. Lila exhaled, slumping against the console. We made it. But they'll hunt us to the rim. Marco grinned, wiping his brow. Lecintrai. We've redefined the game, power isn't in their fleets, it's in what we build from the scraps. Elena rose, gazing into the endless black ahead. Uncharted worlds beckoned, not as saviors or conquerors, but as pioneers carving fear into fuel. The Odyssey pressed on, her crew unbroken, the galaxy forever altered by humanity's quiet, defiant departure.